in Drylands. We just already had a press conference to the same subject, and but we wanted to give an opportunity also to some of the staffs that have technically contributed to the strategy also to make a contribution in this launch. Just briefly to let you know that over the last 1.5 years, we had two working groups to put this strategy together. One was actually the working group. These were nominates by the centers. And then we had the DDGRs as a steering group to also to give inputs. And and that's how we can say that's truly a strategy, compiled by one CGIAR, by all the centers, because in the end, all the centers contributed or signed up on this. And so it's really a collaborative effort. And I don't know if there are many strategies that have been developed and conceived like this, but it was truly, a spirit of all the centers working together. Now, so for the launch, I would like now to invite the champions of the strategy to say a few words. So I would like to invite EMD, Ali, Stan, if you would like to, because now now you have routine, right? So it's a slightly different audience, so that's why. But then, okay, so we can fill the seats. We can have Martina from ABC. We can have Claudia from IFPRI. And we have country manager from World Fish. So to have a little bit of a technical contribution to the strategy, and maybe in order to put us in the right mood, we start with the video.
CGIAR region and the Middle East in general are one of the hardest hit regions in the world in terms of climate change, which makes it very difficult for farmers to practice agriculture the way they have done for the past hundreds of years.
Climate change is a reality in the 21st century. And it's particularly true that in Africa and in Asia, they are experiencing a significant amount of issues in the dryland areas. There is a power to shape the future in what we are doing within this global strategy. We look forward to the new opportunities to harness the power of science and innovation to make real differences in the lives of people and communities in the dryland regions of the globe.
It's critical for the CGIAR to be on the forefront developing new technologies, seeds, agricultural management techniques, leveraging of digital technologies to help farmers manage changing climate environments. The development of the strategy was done in a very engaging and consultative way with our NARS partners and collaborators, private operators, as well as other CGIAR centers, being an integral part of the design process and through a reiterative process of feedback cycles that help us reach with the final strategy in the current shape and form that it is.
Okay, just to set the scene, and now I would like to ask for a few opening remarks by the EMD.
Thank you very much, Michael. And we just launched the strategy in the other room. So just let me share with you how excited I am and how committed I am to the Dryland as one of the people that was born and grew in the region and worked in the region for many years. I think this is really a pioneering initiative. And it is not just a strategy. It's really a path forward for all of us, led by ICARD and Agri-Science, but including all the 15 CGIAR centers to really bring our 5 decades of experience, science and innovation in Dryland together. Because those regions are very important. Right now, Dryland is about 46% of the world land and are home to nearly 3 billion people. They are experiencing much more heat, 20 to 40% more heat than other ecosystems. And hence, it's very important that we tackle them. It's very important that we focus on those dryland and find solutions for those dryland. Of course, all of this cannot happen without really bringing everybody together. And that's why I'm very happy that in this panel, you have a representation already of several CGs. And I know that beyond the CG centers, the national system, the regional system, the FAO, of course, and many others should come on board. So what makes this strategy particularly exciting are 5 key opportunities. The first one, it's optimizing agri-food system to adapt to climate change. So focus on adaptation in those ecosystems, conserving and using biodiversity to support resilient ecosystems and communities. So it's an opportunity to diversify and bring in local species. The third, it's managing soil, land, and water systems to sustainably intensify production. So we have to keep in mind that we need to produce more, but with much less. So soil, water, and all the inputs and all the natural resources has to be properly managed, again, in dryland ecosystems. And we need to ensure access to sustainable, healthy diet to alleviate hunger and malnutrition. Again, 70% of the people with hunger issues are in those drylands. So it's a hotspot to be really looked at with a particular attention. And the fifth one, it's promoting inclusive, equitable development to nurture safety, agency, and peace. So in my perspective as the EMD, it's really important to keep in mind that as for us to deploy our science and innovation agenda, and for us to really achieve our mission and vision, the only way to do it is to give proper attention, proper investment, proper collaboration, proper partnership in ecosystems, both tropical agriculture and dryland. But the dryland, we have 2 centers that have really a wealth of information and experience. We need to bring it with the other centers, as we said, with IMI, with CIMMYT, with WordFish, with IFPRI, with the Alliance, with all of us and others to really find breakthroughs. We need breakthroughs if we want to make better, if we want to have a higher impact, and again, retrieve people from poverty and malnutrition. So congratulations to everybody and looking forward really to working together in implementing this ambitious strategy. Thank you.
Can we then have a few statements from?
Thank you very much, Michael. Michael, for those of you who don't know, has been instrumental in leading this work or co-leading this work with counterparts from Agri-Science and many other scientists across the CGIAR. So it's been really a great opportunity for all of us. It has been a great opportunity for me personally, because through this process, I have learned so much about the work of other centers. And it has been an eye-opener. And I've also come to realize how much the CGIAR as a collective could contribute to providing solutions for the so many challenges across, not only across the Drylands, but more so across the world. When this exercise started, it was initially Agri-Science and Icarda trying to think through what the issues, because together, when you bring in the tropical drylands and the non-tropical drylands, that would be a very powerful combination by itself. But then when we started to do the reflections and discuss and get the knowledge of other scientists across the system, we've come to realize that almost every center in the CGIAR makes a contribution in one form or another to the drylands. So we've decided to open up and make this a truly cross CGIAR center exercise that brings in the Alliance, IFPRI, IMI, and I don't want to cite names because I want to make sure I don't forget anyone, SIP and IIT and many others, CIMIT, of course. So the resulting outcome of this is truly transformational in the way we've been able to mine the innovations from across the CG, learn about what each other center can do, and collectively design a framework that harness this knowledge and bring it in a structured way to focus on the 5 key areas that have been described by Dr. Esmahan at the very initial stage of this. Now, 2 other points I'd like to mention, which I did mention earlier this morning. The drylands, and especially this part of the world, offers a unique opportunity for the rest of the world to invest in research and innovations to develop technologies that will help develop the solutions for the rest of the world in the years to come. The kind of environment we see, the erratic rainfall, the very changing seasons, the rising temperatures, extreme weather conditions, droughts, are all the real environments that we will see, unfortunately, becoming more and more the norm over the next few years. So investing in the drylands today help the world become having a better future. And I think that should be a key message we should all promote across the globe, to ensure that the appropriate investments are made available to all our centers to be able to invest in these technology. My last point here is, with the great excitement that we have invested the past 1.5 years, and with the excitement of launching the strategy, and thank you, Dr. Esmahan, for embracing this and encouraging all of us to work with each other. The real challenge now comes in implementation. So ML, I'm happy you're smiling, because I think one of the greatest advantages is sitting in a room among scientists and challenging each other, right? That's really how you squeeze the best out of everyone. And ultimately, you're agreeing on something and coming up with common positions on certain things. So I'll be very keen to hear from ABC, from WorldFish, from the Alliance, from IFPRI, and many others in the room, how they see themselves within the implementation stage of this strategy, and how can we start to design big projects. We have the portfolio of the CG. That's there, that's given, that's funded. But there is much more that we can do together. How can we design large-scale bilateral programs that we can bring to the rest of the world over and above what we have? For me, that should be the more exciting part, and that's the area where we should systematically approach donors together as a collective, not as an individual center, while of course recognizing that every center will still have legitimate rights to pursue its own agenda. That's not something that the 1CG as designed today would take out of us. It's perfectly legitimate to promote the interest of your center, but work with everyone else. So I leave it there. Thank you very much.
Do we have enough space? We'll get, I'm not going to start karaoke or anything at this stage. Do not be alarmed. Maybe I'll just go, oh, even better.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm Stan Blade. I'm the acting Director General for Agri-Science, and it's a great pleasure. Thank you to Esmahan for supporting this very exciting launch of the global strategy on resilient drylands. And we already have had an interesting dialogue at the press conference. And I think what I would like to remind us of what the possibilities are when the CG centers work together. But I'm going to use a very specific example that ICRISAT has been involved with when it comes to millets. Some of you may know that the Year of Millets was held in 2023. There was a great deal of activity. We had so much support from everywhere. But how do we actually, to the point of implementation, how do we make things work? I'm just reflecting on the last 5 or 6 months of conversations that I have had. So the Honorable Minister from Zimbabwe discussed about the need to have resilient, drought-tolerant crops, and we talked about millet. At that same meeting, it was in Kigali at the Africa Food Security Forum, the Honorable Minister from Mali also talked about wanting to plant 1 million hectares of millet, again, because of all of the issues that are being faced. You will know that ICRISAT is based in India, just outside of Hyderabad, and the Union Government of India is thinking about how can we take advantage of millet. Now, ICRISAT has worked on its mandate crops in Asia, in Africa, just to refresh your memory, working on sorghum and millet, working on groundnut and pigeon pea, and we share a mandate on chickpea, which we found tremendous ways that we can work together on in our various locations. But at the press conference, I just spoke about the fact that we're also working here in the kingdom with millet, with sorghum, with sesame. So the days of having limited geographies, we think that we can bring some experience to this. Of course, we can start with germplasm, those 130,000 accessions in the ICRISAT germplasm bank. We can do great breeding. We can make sure that those crops are being managed in a way in landscapes that we're actually managing water the way that Dr. Jat and others are working on. We can think about how all of these things fit together. I see Dr. Afari Sifa also here, not only on the social aspects of millet, but the nutritious aspects. In the case of India, where we're involved with school feeding programs. So it all fits together. We have this opportunity now in the global strategy of sharing our experiences when it comes to millet. We expand outside of maybe our traditional areas. We want to learn from the other CG centers on how we can work effectively in other geographies, maybe when other demands come through. So ICRISAT is very excited to be part of the global strategy on resilient drylands. We think there's a real opportunity for all of us to work together, whether it was here or in the press conference. I think we've all made the case the problems are too big for one group to solve, and we're very excited to be a participant in this important launch of the strategy, but also the realization of its goals. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. For you to understand is the way we have developed the strategy is basically based on the program that the centers are currently executing. So consider the strategy as a plan of which, roughly speaking, 50% of the activities already funded. But in order to implement the other 50%, so we really need to go out there and do fundraising and to do all those nice and fantastic and innovative things that also emerge over the next 6 years, because that's not written in stone. So there's still a development possible. And so that we need to keep in mind, so that we still need to do the fundraising in order to actually implement the other 50% of the strategy. Now, in order to make it a little bit more plastic, I would like to ask some of the colleagues that participated in developing the strategy, I mean, to tell us a little bit about, their perspective about especially the innovations that fish, the alliance that the different players bring to the strategy. So maybe if we start with Dr. Tina Jaskolski, as you can see. She is from the Alliance Biodiversity CGIAR. She is actually based in Cairo, and she will tell us something about.
I do have a couple of slides. Maybe we could we put the slides up, please? Okay, so while we're waiting, Tina Jaskolski, I'm working with the CGIAR Focus Climate Security Team with the Alliance of Biodiversity and CGIAR. And we're coming at this from the angle of peace and security. So we actually are a team of 70 researchers within Focus Climate Security, looking specifically at this nexus between climate impacts, peace, security, but also social cohesion, displacement, which is very relevant in this region because we are seeing a lot of conflict. So we're 70 researchers working across 7 different hubs globally. And recently in 2023, we founded the MENA Regional Climate Security Hub, which is based in Cairo. And we're working across the region on these issues, advancing the agenda on climate security across the region, but also providing the science, policy advice, and capacity development. So how does this relate to the Dryland strategy? So peace actually is a very important part of the Dryland strategy because we are seeing desertification in places that are also facing conflict, specifically across the MENA region. So what does it mean to actually work on dryland resilience? Oh, sorry, so we have to advance this a little bit. In places that are also affected by fragility. What does it mean? What is the science, the specific science that we have to produce around this? How does conflict risk work? Compound risk work? So how is drought, land degradation intersecting with climate change, with social vulnerability, with displacement? So building a whole science around these questions. How do we even do food system transformation in a place that is fragile? You know, this is something I think we have to ask ourselves as the CGIAR. Maladaptation is a big one. So there's a lot of climate adaptation practices that are good for climate, but bad for peace and social cohesion. So how do we ensure that the strategies that we do implement are also fostering social cohesion and peace and not actually working against it? How can we create these co-benefits, right, between adaptation, resilience, and peace? And how do we mainstream peace across policies? I want to give you a short example from research we've recently done in Jordan on the Fragility, Conflict, and Migration Initiative of the CGIAR. So in Jordan, you see communities that are affected by a whole range of climate change impacts already, but that are also suffering from pre-existing social vulnerability, poverty, unemployment, specifically youth unemployment, but then also hosting millions of refugees, right, that are placing more stress on resource scarcity, that are increasing prices, that are competing with host communities on agricultural food chain labor markets. So how do these communities then deal with climate change, with drought? So how can we create ways that different groups in these communities cooperate together, right? So we looked in Jordan at what's the co-design of agri-food system livelihoods that communities are already practicing, and what are the points of tensions, and how can we work against those? So we've seen that communities and host communities, Jordanians and Syrians, are already working together a lot. Some of that is informal arrangements. It's managing land together, renting land, hiring each other, sharecropping agreements. And a lot of that is already quite successful, right? And at the same time, we're seeing that a lot of the support programs are very group focused. So we have the humanitarian aid provided to the refugees. We have some social protection programs provided to the Jordanians, and communities are actually already on the ground working together. So what the communities were saying is that they wanted more of kind of whole of community development approaches, moving towards the long-term sustainability programs that go beyond the immediate emergency relief, because we're not seeing an emergency anymore. This is a long-term protracted displacement. So for programming, this means perhaps building on the existing types of collaboration that already work and developing programs that address communities and the way that they cooperate rather than singling out individual groups. And also building on refugee expertise. In Jordan, specifically for climate resilience, the refugee expertise is really, really valued. So how can we ensure that refugees can contribute, can invest, and that we can really benefit from their expertise? Lastly, I would like to just tell you what we're looking at in terms of building an agenda around this Dryland strategy. At the Alliance, we have a program called the Climate Smart Village Approach, which has been tested in across Africa and Latin America. And we would like to add a plus, Climate Smart Villages Plus, basically adding the element of peace, social cohesion, and making this work in places that are fragile and that are affected by displacement. And the other thing we'd like to focus on is ecocide. We're seeing this a lot across the region, that ecosystems are being destroyed. Farming is no longer possible. Lands are being abandoned, and this contributes to desertification. It contributes to displacement. How do we rehabilitate all of these ecosystems to ensure that people can move back and can start farming again, and that we can enhance food security again? So I think we need a lot more science around this and a better understanding of how that can be mainstreamed into our programs and policy approaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think this was very relevant contribution. The next person that we have, Dr. Claudia Ringler. She is from IFPRI.
Yes.
And she is a unit director for natural resources resilience, and she will tell us a little bit about from her perspective.
Yeah. Is that working? Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm not using slides because anyway I can't bend backwards. Yeah. So IFPRI is also obviously very happy to be part of this strategy. And in terms of what we can contribute, I think there's lots of little pieces all over the place. So IFPRI operates through 7 different units, and I think they all are linked to Drylands. So we've heard nutrition is obviously we know nutrition is a very big issue in dryland areas. And that's why we also work on water policy because water brings nutrition through many different areas, not just food production, there's direct drinking water, etc. But so we do at IFPRI have a dedicated unit that focuses on nutrition and health. And they're obviously particularly concerned with nutrition and health in the dryland areas. And we have, for example, doing some evaluation of school feeding programs in Yemen. And we are also doing direct support, evaluating programs in Yemen that are focusing on improving the nutrition of, I think, both rural and urban populations, because it's an extremely challenging situation there. And Sikandar Kurdi, who is here in the room from IFPRI's Egypt office, is more directly involved in our Yemen work and can talk more about that. But so we do have a focus on nutrition. I think we have the largest number of nutritionists in CGIAR are hosted at IFPRI. Another area is markets and trade. And of course, we know that all the countries in the Drylands regions are depending on food imports. We would like them to be more resilient, to be able to grow more food at home, but from a comparative advantage perspective and from a natural resources perspective, it doesn't make sense for a lot of the countries to increase food production unless they'll deplete their remaining groundwater resources, like including Saudi Arabia, which is obviously one of the has some of the largest depletion of groundwater resources in the world. So what we are supporting on the trade side is how can you diversify your import partners, because you might remember Egypt, for example, had unfortunately the bad luck of not having a very diversified wheat import strategy when they entered. That happened during the COVID-19 crisis became an issue, became even a bigger issue with the war in Ukraine, because Egypt was very much depending on wheat imports from one single country, I think 80%, and that was a bad situation. So supporting the diversification of your food importers. I think is an important strategy. If you were here earlier this morning, we saw a slide on the extremely highly diversified wheat import portfolio that Saudi Arabia has put together. So they have about 30 countries where they import wheat from. But what we noticed is that, like a third of them are also heavy groundwater depleters, so including Pakistan and India. So if you import from another country that faces the same problem and shouldn't export. So anyway, those are the kind of topics that we are, supporting dryland countries that are heavily depending on food imports. So that's the market and trade division. But of course, markets goes further in terms of seed markets and fertilizer markets. There's also a lot of challenges, that hamper farmers getting access at sufficiently low prices to these very important inputs for agriculture, to improve agricultural productivity. Also, of course, on irrigation technologies, solar pumps, etc. So those are challenges that we are trying to support on the regulatory and policy side. Moving over to our second pillar at IFPRI, we have a science and policy unit, and so they're supporting, looking at the economics of breeding, and also the market side of breeding. What kind of breeding strategies have the highest, economic and food security and poverty reduction impact? And we have a development strategy and governance unit that directly supports agriculture ministries in a lot of countries to decide, where should they put their dollar of investment in, right? Should it be into rural infrastructure? Should it be into breeding? Should it be into irrigation? So how can we maximize rural employment, and how can we, maximize or accelerate agriculture and rural growth? And to what extent, should labor leave agriculture and move into other employment sectors such as industry or the service sector? So that's kind of the strategy work that we're doing. Now, finally, my own unit, natural resources and resilience. So on the natural resources side, we work a lot on institutions and governance. We also do some economic assessments, valuation of, the commons, drylands areas, what are the kind of ecosystem services. So we believe if the economic value of these areas are better known, governments will, maybe be more ready to invest in their restoration. And so I think that's also an important area. But on the institutional side, given that this is a cross CGIAR program, just maybe a few more words on, some of you might know in the mid-1990s, IFPRI started, but it was a cross CGIAR program called Collective Action and Property Rights, the Collective Action and Property Rights Initiative, or CAPRI. So that only focused on how can we strengthen the property rights and the collective action around common areas and common lands. So this is grazing lands, common lands, groundwater resources, all of these resources, forest resources that you can only really manage if you bring groups together, or if you strengthen, so either collective rights to resources or private rights to resources, and also the importance of acknowledging informal rights to resources. Because if farmers and other rural dwellers don't feel that they have a right to use either a water resource or land resource, it's very unlikely that they will invest in the restoration of these resources, or even into maintenance, or into increasing the productivity of these resources. So that is, I think, an initiative that over the years has moved into different CGIAR programs. It was in policies, institution, markets, and now it's going to be part of the landscapes program and also the policy program. But strengthening those resource rights and identifying measures that allow communities to manage these resources jointly, I think this has had a very large impact across the CGIAR and can directly support the Dryland strategy implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Dr. Ahmed Nasser.
Okay.
Who is the country representative of World Fish in Egypt, to say a few words about, from his perspective, related to the Global Dryland Strategy.
Okay. Thank you very much. really thanks for CG and yourself to take this initiative step forward. I start working in integrated agriculture, aquaculture for 15 years ago in desert area. And all the time I was looking for partner with institutions who could collaborate together. Because in desert is not when you go for fish farming in desert, we need horticulture, we need physiology people, fertilizers people, water management, nutrients dynamic. So a lot of science there. And without CG having a big wide variation in science, this is not going to success. So this is our vision. If we add to this is in aquaculture, if we add to this dimension of fisheries in dams, in area like, for instance, in Eritrea, there is 200 dams to catch raining. So including fisheries there is quite important. Having water management, also security, etc. So there is a room to work in both fisheries and aquaculture in Dryland. In Egypt office, we have responsibility to North Africa and Mediterranean and MENA region. So when we started working in integrated agriculture, aquaculture, many of the farmers were raising fish just to feed families by the start. And later on, they discovered this is a good business. So they start to move it to business and became demand driven. So private sector takes the initiative and takes the lead before the science and the government. So the government was just a step behind in all this action. So CG as international organization need to be there to balance between the government and private sector. For instance, we worked under our work in Siwana, we start to talk with the government, we start to talk with the donor, JICA, start to fund project and component in integrated agriculture, aquaculture, in collaboration with fisheries agency in Egypt. So for the first time, fisheries agency in Egypt start to consider integrated agriculture, aquaculture, and give license or facilitate license. So this activity is quite important for MENA region because it's important for many reasons. If we look into food security, up to last year or year before, fisheries was more than 50% food supply. Now fisheries declining and the supply of fish coming from aquaculture. Aquaculture facing challenge, climate change and water availability in Delta, not only in Egypt, in Delta and many countries. So a supply from traditional aquaculture will have a shortage. So we need to move to another alternative. The other alternative will be aligned with the government vision is to extend agriculture to desert area. So aquaculture should move with this. For instance, we talk about in Mogra, in Egypt, 1.5 million فدان. They are allowing integrated agriculture, aquaculture. And the Reef Al Masri, we work with the Reef Al Masri, with fisheries agency to facilitate this and build knowledge and science. But this is not sufficient. World fish is not sufficient. Fisheries agency is not sufficient. So we need to collaborate together and to extend this. Also, we worked in Eritrea. People work in Eritrea at start to have a project in integrated agriculture, aquaculture. They have shortage of water, rainfall issue. When we worked in Ethiopia, we discovered there is 4,000 ponds distributed around the country. Their knowledge in fish farm is limited, and this ponds is water reservoirs. So when we discuss with them using for integration, we talk about 4,000 across Ethiopia. So we talk here about something have impact, regional impact, not limited into one country. We talk about Egypt, we talk about Ethiopia, we talk about Eritrea, we talk about Morocco, we talk also, and there is 20,000 tons of tilapia produced in Saudi Arabia from integrated farm. So this is quite important to make it sustainable. the lesson learned from integrated or pumping groundwater in some area need to be utilized to balance water use. Some fish farmer misuse of water, an integrated system. So this need to be balanced to have equation, how much water required for fish component and how much water required for crop. And we start a calculation from crop to bring to fish. Also, this is in rural area, having food, balanced food there is quite critical. And this is missing. So people who work in integrated farm in rural area have advantage of market. They selling at higher price. In the same time, they cover the need of their families. So this is quite important for human, for social, for food security, for peace. It's important for the sustainability of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As we want to limit deliberations today to 1 hour or less, so I just have one more question, and I want to have a quick reflection from each of the panelists. And of course, we will also listen to.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Ahmed.
I have to leave. I think what we see is this global dryland strategy through all the efforts over year plus is a meta-scale strategy. When we talk about the action, we need to come down to meso and micro scale. And I think as a strategy, further strategy of the strategy in terms of implementation, I would suggest if we can, because we see a lot of innovation within the dryland, but in silos, sitting here and there, within CGIAR, with the partners. I think we need not to reinvent the wheel. The first one is if, and I request Ispan, Ali, and Stan, if we can find out few $1 million to catalyze what is available where, and then see what is applicable where in combination, and then see what are the gaps. So what is available where, and then we make a combination, what can go where, that can go to the scaling as a part, and then what are the gaps, that is a part of the research. So step by step, I think we need to put together. So the action what we have to take right now is putting together or finding some resources to bring all the dryland innovation and put them in a perspective, and then define their recommendation domains so that they can go. And that will also help us in identifying the research gaps, what you have indicated. I think there are a lot of innovations, but they are in isolation. What you have been highlighting, they are counterproductive, and we need to bring them together. That's a suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, along the same line, my question is actually, as I have explained, I mean, so basically half of this strategy is financed, but we need to raise the funds for the other half of the for the implementation of the strategy. So a quick reflection on how do we do the fundraising for this strategy? Have any ideas?
I mean, maybe just again this morning in the tackling water scarcity and drought session, we had Amgat from the Green Climate Fund, and we also had Jeff participation, and they both seem to say that there are a lot of resources for, specifically at focusing on drought and water scarcity in dryland areas. So I think if we put some convincing proposals together for Jeff or GCF, that would be one way forward. I know these things take time, and not all of them actually work for all of the centers for various reasons. But anyway, we had these two people who basically said we have resources this morning, so we shouldn't forget that. So I just wanted to put that up.
Anybody else?
Great question, Michael, and I've been wondering it myself about how you're going to fund the implementation of the strategy. Yesterday at the Finance Day, we were talking about the missing piece of the puzzle. So we know that there is money out there ready and looking for a home for land restoration projects. And we know that there are projects ready to go, but that connecting piece in the middle appears to be quite elusive. One of the lessons that I've learned from Australia is to have projects ready for investment. So very well thought through, partners and collaboration networks ready to go, which obviously you guys are all over. But having those projects that are ready for investment, that aren't necessarily the major scaled project, but can be that initial investment that can be very attractive to donors or to funders.
Let me come. Let me come a bit forward. Yeah. So thanks very much. I think it's been quite exciting. In terms of the fund, and I think we may want to look at, of course, maybe we'll have some global projects or maybe regional, but I think there's also these days also specific regional, calls. For example, the Sahel, African Development Bank and others are looking specifically at intervention. So within the Dryland also, we may have to consider geographies. Yeah. So the Sahel, I know, is one. Horn of Africa is also one. I think USA, Jeff, and maybe also interested in that. So we need to also be looking at that. And then if we have different projects, we can also look at what are the lessons that we learn across some of these geographies. So thanks very much.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has made the experience that an agenda like this one is probably not to be funded in one piece, right? So that so I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, really to have a rounded story and projects that if an investor is interested to farm it out, but also the possibility really to dissect it regional, sub-regionally. So when GCF and Jeff was mentioned, and yeah, so these are all options that we can look into.
I want to make a concrete example that, of course, we have the ICARDA and Agri-Science are co-leads, but everyone else has enormous contribution to make. Moving into implementation, I would suggest we put in a team, a representative from each group that will have the task of mobilizing funding. If we leave it like that, okay, we're going and do it, it's not going to happen. So, Michael, my suggestion is that, post the launch, let's talk with everyone and let's design a very similar process that will identify, 2 or 3 key areas that have high potential, and we develop projects around them. We all have material that is ready for deployment, but it needs to be thought through, and this small group needs to be capacitated and funded for them to be able to engage with donors, to engage on behalf of the CGIAR in full coordination with the Resource Mobilization Office, and of course, making sure that we all remain informed so that we don't contradict, any other particular initiative that is in the making. So hopefully, within the next few months, there would be a major amount of fund, and we should all contribute something small here and there to make sure that this group is enabled and is funded if they have to travel, if they need to meet, if they need to do whatever they need to do, and then hopefully have a review in 6 months, a review in 12 months, and see where we are. That's, yeah. Come on.
Maybe too granular, but I think, we have the CGIAR week coming up in April. I think that we need to set a very tangible target, not only to do this inventory that was talked about, but how we could actually then start setting up a work plan with all of our groups together. So I think we start thinking about April 7th to the 11th as that next target, so that we start to make things real to the people that want to support us, our legacy investors, but of course, those new groups that are also out there.
Excellent suggestion. We take you up on this. You will be part of that group, right?
Thank you. Mine is more of a comment and a comment and a suggestion. I am from the arid region of northeastern Kenya. Oh, you can't hear me. I'm from the northeastern Kenya, arid region. I am a youth and I've been doing climate smart agriculture. I've written policy, and one of the solutions that I saw that I can do there is mainly engage students, schools. So I have been trying to engage with students to do kitchen garden, small kitchen garden, because in institutions you find water, but then when you go to our region, there's water scarcity. But then one thing I noted is in institutions, you find students or the school has water, and how they can do restoration. We have done our 2 years tree initiatives, and right now we have been given a space by school to enable them have a climate, a small kitchen garden, because that's a children home and they don't have, they depend on relief organizations to provide them food. And so I'm trying to, me and my fellow youth and the organization I'm working with, to give them so that they can provide for themselves. And I went and did a benchmarking with other communities who do agriculture. We're not, we are pastoralists, but then now I want to introduce it. Right now I have engaged 4 schools. And so this is a solution that I saw, because if you go to the community, you can't talk about agriculture, you can't talk about tree initiatives when there's no water and there's no food. They can't plant anything without water. So I thought of having that idea of trying maybe to engage the youths, and that's a way that I have seen this going. And through the policies that I have written with Kenya think tank, that is KIPRA, which they have been supporting me, trying to educate my community. And also I've been doing capacity building for the youth, for the fellow youths in my community, trying to introduce them to agriculture to support themselves. So yeah.
Thank you very much. We take up that suggestion, and so coming to an end, I think we have a few very good suggestions on how we move forward. I like the plan of Stan. I mean, put a target. Put a target, and so we will. Some of us will meet again in April, and so by that time, I think we need, you know, to put, you know, to become more granular in terms of implementation, and so that's, and then also the suggestion of Ali to really establish a working group. So we had a working group on developing the strategy, but now we need a working group on implementers and fundraisers, right? So maybe to have from each center a person that can contribute also in terms of fundraising, and I think that's a good way to move forward.
I want to suggest that those who join this group should be a voluntary basis, because we need people that will put their heart at the center of this, people that have the right level of commitment to make sure it works. I don't want to see this as an additional assignment. It really needs to be part of an individual's person mission, put it at their heart to make sure it works. And of course, April for me is the time where we evaluate the progress, not really the start of the process. So yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And
on the funding, I think really there is a huge opportunity with Bezos Earth Fund for this strategy. So I think Bezos Earth Fund, I wouldn't say they don't care about food security, but it's not their priority. Their priority is definitely biodiversity and conservation and restoration of ecosystems. So I think if we go from that angle, I mean, we know, of course, we can double tick the boxes. We are doing this. We know for us, it's very much on food security, but from their perspective, it's very much restoration. So maybe one of the areas that we have to tease out from the strategy, and maybe that committee that is really voluntary based can tease it out, it's program to bring to different, particularly philanthropies with novel ideas like Bezos funds. So I think we have to go beyond the usual donors, and we have only one narrative ourselves. We have to be able to bring different perspective of that narrative whenever it's needed. And I think we are not doing it as well as we should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in strong forces. And as we said, this is the launch, and we are looking forward for continuous participation and collaboration to make it happen. That's very important. We have some excellent ideas. Let's try to put them in practice. And thank you very much. And have a wonderful stay in Saudi Arabia. We have a business. Can I also, so we have some of my colleagues that are based in Nairobi. Would you mind just sending me just a short email and then I can connect them? Would you mind if they contact you just to get some more ideas? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. So I will do this one. And then you can send me an email and then they can connect you to the other robot that she's based in there. That's very kind. Thank you for this. This was very helpful.